Imagine AD 1755. All Saints' Day. Imagine the city of Lisbon squeezes you in its morning grip, street vendors shouting, sandals scraping stone, the press of bodies all flowing toward the same doors. You hold a candle stub, pinched between fingers already slick with melted wax, and a small coin that feels too light for the promise it buys. You see churches swelling with people, packed so tight that breath becomes shared property. You smell incense thick as syrup. You hear prayers hitting the ceiling like rain. The city feels armored in stone and faith. You push forward because everyone pushes. You feel the shame of hesitation because today, in this city, hesitation feels like sin. You step into a church where the air is hot with bodies and devotion. You see gilded saints staring down, faces calm, hands raised in eternal blessing. You feel the floor under your soles, hard and certain, like a promise. But certainty is a lie that only lasts until it doesn't. The ground snaps. Not shakes, snaps, like a thick beam breaking under too much weight. Your knees slam into the stone. Teeth clack. A sound rises from the building, a groan from deep inside the walls, as if the church itself suddenly remembers it is only stacked rock. You see dust burst from cracks in the masonry, a gray fist punching the air. You feel plaster rain onto your hair and down your collar. Someone screams a name, but the name vanishes under a rolling roar that comes from beneath the world. The ceiling begins to fall in slow motion and then all at once. You see a chandelier swing like a weapon. You see candles tumble, flames scattering across robes and wooden pews. You smell hot tallow and smoke. People surge, but the doorway is a throat that cannot swallow fast enough. You feel ribs crush against ribs. You feel someone's nails rake your sleeve, not in malice, just in terror. You don't know if this is punishment or accident, omen or physics, miracle or random cruelty. You only know stone is coming down. You claw forward. A hand clamps onto your coat, maybe to save you, maybe to use you as a ladder. You wrench free because kindness and predation look identical in a stampede. A column fractures with a crack like thunder. Dust blinds you. You cough and taste grit. The doorway buckles. The lintel drops. You dive through as masonry chases you out into the street. Outside, the street is a moving canyon. You see buildings sway as if drunk. Balconies tear loose and tumble. A man runs with a child in his arms. The child's mouth opens, but no sound comes out because the world is too loud for small voices. You feel the ground roll underfoot, not like a wave on water, but like the city becomes a sheet being snapped by invisible hands. A crack opens under your feet, wide enough to swallow a cart, and the edges grind as they pull apart. You jump without thinking and land hard, ankle twisting, pain bright as a blade. Bells ring without hands. You hear them clanging from towers that split and lean, the sound turning holy metal into an alarm. You see people drop to their knees in the street, palms up, begging. But prayer has no traction here. You don't know if this is one quake or the first punch of many. You feel the city wobble in fragments. Stop, lurch, stop, like a dying animal refusing to fall. You run toward open ground, toward the river, because everyone runs toward open ground. You see the crowd funnel into wider streets, climbing over rubble, over bodies that may be dead or only stunned. You smell blood, sharp and metallic, mixed with the choking dust. Someone shouts that the palace collapses. Someone else shouts that the cathedral cracks. The shouts collide, and truth becomes a thing you cannot grab. Therefore you follow motion, because motion feels like survival. The Tagus waterfront heaves into view, and it looks like safety because it looks like space. You see thousands of bodies jammed along the quays, shoulder to shoulder, faces turned toward the water as if the river is a god that stays calm. You taste salt on your lips, salt and grit. You feel your lungs burn from dust and panic. The ground still twitches, quick vicious jolts like aftershocks testing whether you stand or fall. But the river is there, wide and familiarity is seductive. Then the waterline crawls backward like it's afraid of the city. You see it happen in a way your mind rejects. Boats drop, ropes go slack, mud appears where water belongs. Fish writhe in the exposed riverbed, silver bodies flapping like thrown coins. The crowd leans forward as one creature. Some people cheer because humans cheer when they don't understand danger. Others scream because some part of them recognizes the wrongness. You feel the hair on your arms rise. You don't know the word tsunami as a scientific term, but your bones know the meaning. The river is inhaling. Shouts collide. The sea is gone. The hills are cracking. The palace falls. The saints turn away. You hear fragments, half-truths, full lies, and terror wearing the mask of certainty. Survivors sprint in from side streets, faces white with dust, eyes wide, babbling reports that contradict each other. A man insists fire eats the lower city already. Another insists the bridges collapse. You cannot trust any single voice, but you must choose where to run next. You see some people run onto the exposed riverbed, chasing dropped cargo, chasing valuables, chasing the illusion that disaster offers gifts. But something inside screams that the riverbed is a trap. Therefore, you push away from the edge, shoving through bodies, taking elbows to the jaw, feeling teeth cut the inside of your cheek. You taste blood. You taste fear. You look back because the crowd's sound changes, less chatter, more animal. The horizon lifts. It isn't a cloud. It isn't fog. It is a wall. You see water rising up, not flowing in, but standing tall as if it has bones. For a heartbeat, the world becomes silent in a way that feels impossible, like all sound gets sucked into the throat of the coming wave. Then the roar arrives. It is not like rain. It is not like wind. It is like the sky tearing. You sprint. Your lungs seize. Your legs feel heavy as if the dust in the air becomes lead inside your muscles. You see people freeze because the brain sometimes chooses denial over speed. You see others run the wrong direction because panic turns the city into a maze with no signs. The first tsunami slams the quay. The stone shudders. Boats become hammers. Masts snap. Crates spin like dice. You feel the impact through the ground before the water reaches you, a vibration that rattles bones. The water hits. It grabs ankles, then knees, then waists, climbing fast like a living thing. You feel it cold and brutal, salt biting skin, force yanking your center of gravity away. You grab a stranger's wrist because instinct reaches for anything solid. For half a second, grip becomes hope. You see the stranger's eyes lock onto yours, two animals recognizing the same terror. But the water rips them away like paper. Their fingers peel from yours, one by one, nails scraping skin, and then they are gone, swallowed by foam and debris. You fight to stay upright, but upright stops meaning anything. You slam into a floating plank, pain flashes across your ribs. You cling. You cough water. You taste salt and sewage and something worse. A cartwheel spins past your face. A barrel bangs into your shoulder. Somewhere nearby, someone prays out loud, words broken by choking. You don't know if another wave follows in seconds or minutes. Time turns syrup thick under terror. The water retreats. It drags wreckage back toward the river like a thief hauling loot. You see bodies tangled with ropes, with beams, with shattered furniture. You see a woman crawling on hands and knees, hair plastered to her face, reaching for a child-shaped bundle that does not move. You stagger onto broken stone. Your clothes cling heavy and cold. Your hands shake so hard they cannot close. But you're standing. Therefore, standing becomes your first victory, even as the city behind you begins to burn. Fire arrives as if it hides inside every household object and suddenly remembers its job. You see fallen candles licking up along wooden pews that crash into the street. You see kitchen coals spilled from shattered hearths. You see oil lamps broken open, their contents spreading like dark blood across the stones. A spark finds it, then another, then everything finds it. The flames don't just burn, they run. Aftershocks keep coming, short, vicious jolts. Each jolt knocks loose more masonry, more tiles, more glass. You feel the ground kick like a mule. You hear a building's last breath as it folds in on itself. You try to move inland, away from water and fire, but the streets are choked with rubble and people. You see faces blackened by soot, eyes bright with shock. Some hands reach out to pull others up, but other hands reach into pockets. Looters appear. Not as a new species, but as a choice made in the instant law cracks. You see a man with a knife pry rings from a swollen hand. You see another smash a shop shutter with a stone, grabbing cloth, grabbing sugar, grabbing anything that feels like control. You hear the brittle sound of law breaking, quiet at first, like ice forming fractures, then loud as the crowd learns it can. But help does not arrive on time, because help is also running. Therefore, danger multiplies. You duck into a side street to avoid the crush. Heat pushes you back, a force you can feel on your cheeks like an open oven. Smoke rolls low, thick and oily. You cough until your stomach cramps. Tears stream from your eyes, not from emotion, but from your body trying to wash itself clean. You navigate by sound, screams to avoid, crying to follow, collapsing timbers to outrun. You guess where the wind traps you, because the smoke moves like a predator, cutting off exits. You see the city turn into chimneys. Narrow streets pull the flames upward, funneling heat into a roar. Roof beams ignite and rain sparks. You feel your skin prickle as embers land, tiny stings that warn of worse. Someone bumps you, and for a moment you think it is an attack. But it is only another survivor, eyes vacant, arms out as if sleepwalking through hell. You don't know where family members are. You don't know whether the next corner is open air or a wall of flame. Therefore, each step is a gamble. A square opens ahead, space, breathing room. You stumble into it because the body craves any shape that isn't a corridor of fire. You see clusters of survivors, huddled and shaking, some bleeding, some carrying the injured on doors used as stretchers. You hear prayers again, quieter now, less confident. People believe numbers equal safety. But numbers also equal targets, equal disease, equal panic. Therefore, the square is not peace. It is a pause before another test. A new sound cuts through the chaos. Boots. Not random running. Organized boots. You hear them striking stone in the same rhythm. You see a line of soldiers, still together, moving like a knife through panic. Their uniforms are dusty, their faces hard. Bayonets catch firelight. The crowd parts because a bayonet speaks a language that needs no translation. A man in command rides the moment like a rider forcing a horse through smoke. You see him not as a savior in shining cloth, but as a human with a jaw set so tight it looks painful. His voice hits like musket shots, short commands, no softness. Bury the dead. Feed the living. Stop the looting. The words are simple. The method is terrifying. You hear rumors move faster than flames, cords strung across streets, patrols with permission to kill, bodies hanged as warnings. In the smoke, mercy and brutality blur. But order arrives, therefore fear changes shape. You are not asked politely. You are used. A soldier grabs your sleeve and shoves you toward a line of buckets. You see others passing water, hand to hand, desperate, spilling half, but refusing to stop. The bucket's rim cuts into your fingers. Your arms tremble with fatigue within minutes. Someone points at a pile of rubble where a foot sticks out at the wrong angle. You hear the command again, move the dead. The word dead lands heavy because some are not dead yet. You don't know which moans mean life and which mean air escaping. You choose. Not a grand moral speech, just a movement. You can join the bucket line to fight fire. You can help drag bodies before disease blooms. Or you can try to slip away with what you can carry. But the streets are watched. You see soldiers at corners, silhouettes in smoke, bayonets angled downward like fangs. Therefore, the city becomes a controlled experiment in survival, and you become one of the test subjects. You lift debris with strangers whose names you never learn. A beam weighs like a judgment. It digs into palms and leaves splinters. You feel your back strain, muscles screaming. Someone beside you retches from the smell beneath the rubble, sweet rot beginning already, mixed with incense, smoke, and sewage. You hear flies before you see them. You learn that death has a sound. But the fires keep advancing. Therefore, every minute spent lifting one beam is a minute the flames steal another street. Another aftershock hits mid-command. You feel it through your knees first, an upward punch, then the whole square shivers. Everyone freezes, eyes wide, waiting for the ground to finish its sentence. Stones clatter from damaged roofs. Somewhere a wall collapses with a crash that sends people ducking. For an instant, the city holds its breath. You don't know if the next jolt topples what remains. The man in command does not flinch. He keeps speaking, voice steady, as if discipline can shame the earth into stopping. You realize the ordeal isn't only the quake. It is whether Lisbon becomes a community or a hunting ground. You see it in small choices: a woman sharing bread crusts, a man hiding a stolen purse, a soldier turning his head away, another soldier leveling a musket at a thief. But hunger sharpens. Therefore, morality starts to feel like a luxury item. Food becomes power. You see lines form around makeshift distribution points, barrels, carts, anything that holds grain. You hear arguments explode over portions. A child cries with a thin, relentless sound. Someone collapses from exhaustion, and nobody steps forward at first because everyone fears a trick, fears theft, fears being dragged into obligation. But then two strangers lift the fallen body anyway. Therefore, kindness flickers, stubborn as an ember. The dead cannot all be named. You see piles covered with cloth that does not cover enough. You smell lime and smoke and the iron stink of wet rubble. You hear orders to move bodies fast because sickness waits for bureaucracy. Rapid burials happen without ceremony, too many to mourn properly, too urgent to delay. Some bodies go to the river, pushed out to sea because ground is scarce and the living need space. The water that almost kills you becomes a graveyard road. Rules appear faster than relief. You see quarantine lines, ropes, guards, shouted instructions. You hear price controls announced in hard tones because merchants are tempted to turn scarcity into profit. You watch forced labor conscript survivors, haul water, clear streets, build shelters. You feel resentment rise because suffering already drains you and now the state's hand clamps onto your shoulder. But you also feel something else. If no hand clamps down, the looters and the flames finish the job. Therefore, resentment fights gratitude inside your chest. Night does not bring peace. You see the glow of fires on the horizon, turning smoke into a red ceiling. You hear distant musket cracks, maybe warning shots, maybe executions, maybe a building collapsing like a cannon. You don't know which. You lie on stone or on damp ground with strangers, too tired to speak, too afraid to sleep deeply. Every vibration becomes a threat. Someone whispers that God turns his face away. Someone else whispers that God tests the faithful. But the earth gives no answer. Therefore, belief becomes private, fragile, and furious. Days blur into smoke and orders. You see messages carried through the ruins, spoken, repeated, corrected, weaponized. Rumors try to become rulers. Some claim foreigners cause this. Some claim sinners cause this. Some claim the end of the world arrives by sunset. But authority learns to choke rumors before rumors choke the city. Therefore, information becomes as valuable as bread. You watch the command structure harden. Patrols march. Notices get read aloud. People get counted, alive, missing, dead. You see scribes with ink-stained fingers trying to capture chaos on paper. You see officials demanding lists, which streets burn, which wells function, which supplies remain. It feels cold. It feels heartless. But it also feels like the only thing that fights the shapeless monster of disaster. Therefore, numbers begin to rule feelings. Imagine standing at the edge of a neighborhood that no longer exists. You see ash where shops stand yesterday. You see blackened walls standing like teeth after flesh burns away. You feel grit under your fingernails that no washing removes. The air stays thick with prayers and with smoke that clings to hair and cloth. You look for landmarks, but landmarks become rubble. You realize memory fails when the map is erased. The cost becomes visible in the small, unbearable moments. You see a man holding a key to a house that is now a crater, still clutching it as if metal can unlock ash. You see a priest with shaking hands trying to bless a row of bodies without names. You hear a mother calling into a pile of stone as if a voice can pull a child through rock. But the calls fade. Therefore, silence becomes the loudest sound in Lisbon. Here is the truth that hides inside the smoke. Disaster is not only nature. Disaster is a power vacuum. Whoever can count bodies, control rumors, and move resources becomes the state in real time. You see it happening around you like metal cooling into a new shape. Emergency governance spreads across the ruins, cordons, rationing, forced work, swift punishment. It does not ask permission from philosophy. It does not wait for debate. It acts because delay kills. But action without restraint also kills. Therefore, every command carries a shadow. You feel that shadow when soldiers drag a looter into the open. The crowd gathers fast because fear loves a spectacle. You hear pleading. You hear accusations. You see the musket raised. You don't know if guilt is real or convenient. You don't know if the execution stops theft or simply proves power. The shot cracks. Birds explode from a roofline. The body drops. The crowd inhales like a single lung. But theft slows, at least where patrols walk. Therefore, the city trades liberty for breath. You watch relief become strategy. Bread distribution becomes a way to prevent riots. Shelter allocation becomes a way to control movement. Public announcements become weapons against panic. You see the leaders learn, in real time, that a frightened population obeys the loudest voice, or the most credible one. Therefore, credibility becomes a form of infrastructure, as necessary as bridges. You see the birth of modern disaster politics in the mud and smoke, not in a lecture hall. Command, messaging, data, triage. The terrifying math of deciding which street gets water first, which district gets guards, which fire gets fought, and which gets surrendered to the flames. You feel it when a bucket line gets redirected, when a family gets pushed aside because a warehouse of grain matters more than a single home. But a warehouse of grain keeps thousands alive. Therefore, the heart breaks to keep the body breathing. You stumble through the new Lisbon, the Lisbon that exists before rebuilding even starts. You see tents and makeshift shelters like a new city stitched onto the corpse of the old. You hear hammers, not for construction of beauty, but for construction of necessity. You feel blisters on your hands become permanent companions. Someone offers you a cup of water. It tastes of smoke. You drink anyway, because life is now measured in mouthfuls. You think about how quickly the rules arrive. Yesterday, the city lives by custom, church bells, merchant hours, familiar authority. Today, it lives by emergency decrees and armed patrols. You feel the speed of that transformation like vertigo. But chaos invites predators. Therefore, people accept chains if chains keep wolves away. The verdict sits heavy in your throat as the dust settles. You stand amid ash where streets used to be. You see gaps in the skyline like missing teeth. You feel the weight of exhaustion pressing your shoulders down. The living cannot all be fed. The dead cannot all be named. Yet the city still moves, limping, coughing, obeying, resisting in small ways, surviving in the only way available. Now the mirror turns toward the present. You recognize the pattern because it never fully leaves. A flood, a fire, a quake, a plague, nature strikes, but society decides what happens next. Whoever controls information becomes the loudest lighthouse in the storm. Whoever controls movement controls fear. Whoever controls resources becomes legitimacy. Therefore, every modern emergency carries a second emergency inside it, the struggle over who gets to command the frightened. You see how easily temporary measures begin to feel normal when danger feels permanent. You feel how quickly neighbors become suspects when rumors spread faster than aid. You see how the desperate will trade privacy for safety, wages for rations, rights for order, if the alternative looks like burning streets. But power rarely returns gently to its box once it learns the shape of control. Therefore, the most dangerous aftershock is not in the ground. It is in people, what they accept, and what they do when the world breaks. You feel that truth in your own chest as you remember the stranger's wrist slipping away in the wave. You remember the musket shot in the square. You remember the bucket line, the forced labor, the bread counted like ammunition. Nature breaks stone, but humans decide what rises from the rubble. So here is the legacy question, the one that cannot be Googled, only answered. When the ground cracks under your own city, when fear makes you hungry for order, what part of your freedom do you offer first? And what part do you refuse to surrender even if the flames come closer?